Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. This is my twice weekly webcast. It's Sunday the 12th of November. This is show 383. And in today's Elevenses, what have I got for you? Well, some news about the live talk events. They are back to run through the late autumn and winter. I'll ask if imitation is actually flattery. We'll have a look at some news stories. The first is about one motorcyclist leaving another injured in the road after a collision at traffic lights. Fuel theft from forecourts has soared. That's not really very surprising, I guess. The King's speech fails to mention e-stepscooters, something that was widely anticipated. General Motors are recalling their cruise driverless taxis over in the US. A tarantula has caused a collision involving a biker. Sales are down 16% for Harley-Davidson, but there are low interest deals available on selected Suzukis. We'll have a quick look at a bike come car come aeroplane before we head back to EICMA, the Milan show, and I'll do a second roundup of some new models from there. And finally, we'll have a quick look at the question of when is a vehicle not a vehicle, and the answer to that is when it's a bicycle, or what about an e-step scooter? Where does that fit into the scheme of things? So settle yourselves down for the next 30 minutes or so. Don't forget, if you have a question, anything you want to ask, any comments on the show generally, I am always very happy to try to answer those during the show if I possibly can. If I can't, I will get back to you after the show. And we have Clive looking in. Good morning, Clive. Nice to see you again. Right, okay, so on with the show then. So, all right, first thing to say is, as I'm sure you know, Black Friday is November the 24th this year, and that means it's the end of next week. Now, as last year, there will be a week where I'll be running some special offers. They'll go right through till Friday the 24th, all available over on my coffee page. I will mention them here over the next couple of shows, of course. And there will be a download available of one of my better biking books, one that I haven't made available as an ebook before. So you'll get not just a great read, but some great savings on that as well. Now, all those, I will announce them on the Sunday the 19th, right through to the week. So make sure you tune in to Elevenses in a week's time. The offers obviously will go out on the newsletter and also on Facebook, so there are plenty of ways to find out what I'm offering. Now, meanwhile, I'm never too surprised when I cover a better biking topic and discover it's been covered elsewhere. I mean, it's no big deal really, is it? Because there are lots of techniques that have fairly standard solutions, so there will be lots of people writing, and parallel evolution of course means that we often come up with the same solutions. There often are a limited number of ways of doing things, but sometimes I'll admit I'll see an article elsewhere which covers something that I can't recall having talked about before, so I'll have a good think about that and then I'll give you my own opinion on the issue. Occasionally I will take a different point of view though on a particular technique. Now, you may recall that I posted recently on trail braking, and that's a good example where I seem to be going against the majority view and being told fairly unceremoniously in some cases that I'm getting it all wrong. I don't think I am, and I think I've given you some good solid science-based reasons that I'm not wrong. Anyway, occasionally it's clear that my article is the starting point of somebody else's post, since it's pretty clear that my own spin on something has been borrowed. Now, I don't mind particularly because obviously the aim of writing and talking about motorcycling generally is to get people thinking. So if somebody covers the same topic in the same way as me, and that gets some extra exposure, I don't mind, although if they did use my article as a starting point, I would like to be credited. And there have been a couple of occasions when my work has generally been pinched and not been credited. Now, on one occasion I actually had an entire article appear word for word perfect in an IAM club magazine. I wouldn't mind if they'd asked me first. If you do want to reprint anything for a club mag, just ask me, and I'm more than happy, generally speaking, to give you the article, just as long as you credit me and pop a link to my social media and what have you in the footer. But I actually had an article pinched from a web page for another web page. They stole the entire text, and then somebody else put his signature on the bottom of it to claim that he'd written it. Now that one I did get taken down, so I'm not quite sure whether this particular headline actually counts as stealing my Science of Being Seen strapline. As you know, I created the Science of Being Seen project back in 2012. It was for the fire services, initially Kent Fire and Rescue, but it went out as a module 3 of the Biker Down course. So most fire services in the UK picked up Biker Down, and most of those ran my Science of Being Seen. It's still being used. The content, they changed the name, but pretty much it's the content I produced, which is in their Thinking Biker topic now on Biker Down. Be nice if I got credit for that, but hey how I didn't. But this is cycling, bicycling magazine online website, and they've just basically, it seems, pinched the Science of Being Seen header. Anyway, hey ho, never mind. Kevin's looked in as well. Now, don't forget, the next online talk event will be the Science of Being Seen. It will be the full session, the full presentation, updated a bit with some new information, but you can find that here. I'm just putting the link up for you. Do go over there, have a look, and if you fancy, sign up for the full Science of Being Seen. It'll cover everything about conspicuity, why sometimes our efforts at being conspicuous don't work. Maybe it's because we didn't choose the best way of being conspicuous. Maybe it's because of the way the human brain and eye work. I'll explain those issues, but I'll also give you some hints at how to use high-vis and day riding lights more effectively. Right, so that's all in the on the 20th of November, so just over a week's time. Do come over and sign up for that if you fancy. I'm sure you'll find it very interesting if you haven't seen it, and even if you have, it's always worth a refresher. There's always new stuff that gets put into those items. Right, okay, so anyway, on with the weather. Now, if you're planning to head out on the bike in the next few days, there will be some decent weather around. Now, for starters, it's been a crisp and dry morning for some of us today, although there is a band of patchy rain heading over us right now, and it is raining in London at the moment. It was dry earlier, but there by midday or thereabouts, end of the show, it will run roughly northwest to southeast from sort of Belfast area through London and out over Kent. But for much of Scotland, northeast and eastern England, it should be a fairly fine and sunny day, but it will be pretty chilly where it's dry. Now, after that, the weather does go a bit up and down. There'll be another windier and wetter front sweeping across the UK on Monday. That will actually raise temperatures behind it, so it'll go up from sort of where it is now, which is single figures, back to the mid-teens, which is a bit of apparently it'll be possible a record temperature for early November. Then it will dry up behind that in the south and southwest, but Tuesday will be a day of sunshine and blustery showers for most of the country. But then there is another area of low pressure winding up, which looks set to bring some more prolonged and heavy rain and windy conditions to the south of the country. But up in the north, you should see a fine dry day on Wednesday. Check your forecast, of course, for more details nearer the time, but that should hopefully give you a bit of an overview of what's likely to be going on. Kevin says he had a subtitled input when he attended a Biker Down Mod 3. It was a scant input with not much mentioned and you not credited. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing, having put so much work into giving the fire services for nothing, absolutely nothing. They got it all completely free. I didn't get a penny out of them, not even expenses for attending and putting my presentation out to Kent. It is a bit disappointing that there was no credit being given. I did ask them to do that. Some fire services have been scrupulous, I know, in crediting me. Others have been less so. Right, okay, so on with the news anyway. Now, we often hear a lot about the brotherhood of bikers, but unfortunately, it seems that some riders seem to forget that. Now, there was a collision in Gerrard's Cross where the rider of a Harley-Davidson actually took out the rider of a Triumph, causing him to fall off. He simply rode off. Now, the Triumph rider was initially believed to have suffered a dislocated shoulder, and he actually required full reconstructive surgery to put it all back together. But he was also later found to have had a fracture to his spine, so fairly serious injuries from this. He has since been discharged from hospital. Now, the incident happened around a month ago, and it happened in Gerrard's Cross, which happens to be an area I know fairly well. And apparently the two motorcycles were pulling away from the traffic lights when the Harley-Davidson attempted to undertake the Triumph, but obviously hit it. Now, the Harley rider failed to stop at the scene. Not surprisingly, officers from Thames Valley Police would now like to speak to him, and they're also, of course, appealing to witnesses to come forward, including drivers who they believe may have seen the incident and possibly have dash cam footage. Now, the police say, fairly generously, I think, that the other rider may not have realised the seriousness of the collision, though speaking from personal experience of having been hit by another bike, both of us knew full well we'd collided. Fortunately, neither of us fell off, but riding off like that is fairly unacceptable, I think. Now, data obtained by the RAC Foundation. Now, that shows that the number of fuel thefts that have been taking place from forecourts across the UK has actually soared. Their data suggests that filling station owners have attempted to trace vehicle keeper data no fewer than 39,563 times between July and September. That's a huge number when you think about it. That's up 77% from just over 22,000 requests made to the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Agency during the same period last year, and it's up more than 4 times on the same 3 months in 2019. Now, most of the incidents are likely to relate to drive-offs, people who fill up and then simply jump back in the car and zip off. And the RAC suggests that the rise could be due to systematic criminal activity, though I'm not so convinced by that one. There is an organisation with the wonderful name of the British Oil Security Syndicate, which apparently campaigns to reduce crime on the forecourts, and they estimate that the practice is costing filling stations on average £10,500 each year. And of course, that cost is fed back into the price of fuel for those of us who do choose to pay for our petrol. So if we could eliminate people driving off, that would be a good thing, in my opinion. Now, something I mentioned last month when I was looking at the MCIA's proposals for motorcycle rider training was that they had also made a play to bring e-step scooters into the motorcycle fold. Now, clearly they have one eye here on legalising the widespread sales of these things. And it's pretty damned obvious, really, that the idea would be to give motorcycle dealers another item that they could sell, something inexpensive that they could hopefully sell and keep themselves profitable. But it was actually widely anticipated that the King's Speech, that's the device, as you probably know, which the government uses to set out their legislative plans for the coming year, it was thought that the King's Speech would actually reveal new laws covering the use of private e-step scooters on the UK's roads, but in the event they didn't get a mention, and the continuing delay in bringing these scooters into the road regulations has sparked ongoing criticism, both from the people who think they are a valuable new means of transport, and there are plenty of those, and those who believe they are a menace and want to see them banned, and there are also plenty of those. Now, despite the fact that they are not currently classified, the thing is that because they are powered, they are legally vehicles. Now, I'll see my final in-depth piece on the topic, see exactly what a vehicle might be, and therefore, of course, there is a requirement for licence and insurance to operate one of these on public roads. Now, privately owned e-scooters currently fall outside any classification or licence class, and so that means even if one is operating them on a public road, it will be an offence, and it can attract points on the licence, and it can attract points on the licence even if you don't actually have one. Now, right now, the only legal step scooters are the rental ones available under the trial schemes. The government has promised to extend existing trials to 2026, but some trials have been ended early by local councils, and of course there is no trial, which means the vast majority of the country, that means there's no legal route to riding one. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show, if there's content that you would like to pass on to other people, please do so. Please share, like, comment, all the usual things I ask you to do. That's always a good idea. And don't forget, you can come back and catch these shows every Wednesday and Sundays at 11. Almost always live, very occasionally recorded, and even more rarely I miss a show due to other activities. But if you do miss one, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is a good idea, of course, because then you'll get notification of all the videos that go up, and you can watch the old 11s if you want to catch up with one in their very own channel over there. Right, we've got a comment that's popped up. Kevin says the bilking, that's what's known as the technical term for driving away without paying for your petrol. He says prepay at pump or at kiosk technologies already exist, easily sorted. Yeah, and yes and no. I mean, I'm quite happy to stick a card into the pump, press the buttons, and have the fuel, the bill deducted as soon as I put the thing back in the nozzle back in the holster. That's not a problem, although there are problems with those sometimes, and there have been instances, for example, where somebody's put their bank debit card in, and for some reason there have been a malfunction and the machine has emptied their debit account. Now, if that happens to be your only bank account, you're in big trouble at that point, and it can be difficult to get the bank to return your cash, which is why I always use credit card for these things, because then it's the credit card's money and not actually mine. I might have to argue the toss about it later, but at least I've still got money in my own bank account. So there are problems with prepay, and I particularly dislike having to go to the kiosk to pay first. I mean, how much petrol's going to go in the tank? I don't know. If I want to fill it up, how can I pay in advance for an amount of fuel that I don't know how much I'm going to need? So I'm not. Yeah, you can do it, going to the kiosk first, but it's not my ideal solution. Prepay pumps are probably better from that point of view. It's just a case of getting them installed, really, isn't it? And then you've got to watch out for credit card fraud, I guess. So yes, there are pluses and minuses on both sides. Oh yes, let's turn that banner off, which is going whizzing around on the bottom of the screen there. Let's get rid of that. All right, okay, so anyway, on to the USA, on to General Motors, and on to the Cruise, the autonomous car unit of GM. Now, they have recalled 950 of these driverless cars in the United States, and this follows the incident I talked about a couple of shows back, where a pedestrian in San Francisco who was hit by a hit-and-run driver and was in the road, was then hit a second time by the Cruise robo-taxi, which not only failed to stop, but then drove to the side of the road before stopping, dragging the unfortunate pedestrian actually under the car. Now, California regulators ended up suspending the robo-taxi's license, saying that these self-driving vehicles were a risk to the public. And Cruise now say that the recall addresses circumstances, quote, in which the collision detection subsystem may cause the Cruise AV to attempt to pull over out of traffic instead of remaining stationary when a pullover is not the desired post-collision response. GM also said that the company will temporarily halt the production of the fully autonomous Cruise Origin. So we are still some way away, it seems, from perfectly safe autonomous vehicles. Now, in the silly season, events. A tarantula has been blamed for causing a collision which left a motorcyclist hospitalised. A Swiss couple were on holiday. They were driving through Death Valley National Park a couple of weeks ago when they spotted a tarantula crossing the road. Now, they were in a camper. The driver hit the brakes to avoid running the spider over, but that caused a 24-year-old Canadian motorcyclist to crash into the back of the rented camper van. That will be an interesting insurance claim to sort out. The National Park Service reported that the rider was taken by ambulance to the Desert View Hospital in Pahrump, but his condition was unknown. The spider, however, was reported to have fled the scene unhurt. It's tough times for Harley-Davidson as the company reports a 16% drop in motorcycle sales worldwide into the third quarter of 2023. CEO Jochen Zeitz, he specifically highlighted the news that retail sales were up 25%, but the sales of motorcycles, excluding Livewire, declined in all geographic regions in that third quarter of this year. Now, overall, worldwide sales were down 16% on the previous year. In North America, the company saw a 15% drop in sales compared with 2022. In Europe, the Middle East, Africa, they all count as one region apparently. Sales fell by 13%. For Asia Pacific, that took a big hit, down 24%. And finally, Latin America down 11%. So year on year, the motor company reported a 24% drop in profits in the third quarter of 2023. Reuters noted that shares fell by 11% in response to this news, which is a pretty significant drop. Now, on the other hand, the autumn's actually a pretty good time to look for bargains as dealers start to try to make room for some new model ranges. Excuse me. And Suzuki are helping out with a 2.9% APR finance offer on a number of models. Now, it's apparently available over 4 years on both PCP and HP plans. The deal includes the Hayabusa, including the new 25th anniversary model, the V-Strom 1050 and the V-Strom 1050DE, the GSX S1000 and the GSX S1000 GT and GT Plus. The last of those bikes I thought was selling pretty well, but hey, there's a cheap finance deal. You can also get £500 off the GSX R125 and GSX S125 if you are in the market for a learner legal bike, and there are £750 worth of free accessories available on the two 1050 V-Stroms. Nothing there about the 650 though. All offers available till 31st of January. Right, okay, so over to MotoGP with a bit of news here. There are rumours that changes could be not too far away in the way that GP teams operate. Now, right now, the rules are fixed to the end of the 2026 season, but according to Pit Bearer, he's the KTM Motorsport director, the future could involve engine manufacturers developing a single engine engine platform for all their supported teams, and then the teams would have the freedom to use a different chassis around these identical power units. Now, this is the system that's currently used in Formula One, as I understand it. Not that I have to admit I'd never much watched Formula One, too processional, and it is arguable that it's this identical engine approach which is in fact responsible for the sometimes lack of progress of particular teams past other teams. The quickest cars tend to start at the front and then they tend to stay there. Now, hot off the press also is the hint that the legendary Italian brand MV Agusta, you may recall they dominated Grand Prix racing through the late 60s and into the early 70s, they could be potentially about to re-enter the Premier MotoGP class after the 2026 season. Now, MV is owned by Pira Mobility, who also, of course, own KTM, who have a team in MotoGP. Now, their motorsport director, he suggested that MV could be entered as a separate brand, presumably by supplying the KTM engine under these new rules to be wrapped in a new chassis. And he says, I do not rule out involvement with MotoGP and MV after 2026. Right, okay, so on with some news about motorcycles, although whether you class this one as a motorcycle, I'm not entirely sure. Let me just put a video up for you to watch when you get a moment. There it goes, because I'm not sure whether this counts as a motorcycle or what. Have a look at this. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? It's the Samson Sky Switchblade. Now, to quote from the manufacturer, the Switchblade is a three-wheel, street-legal vehicle that you can drive from your garage to a nearby local airport. Once there, the wings swing out and the tail extends in under 3 minutes. Now, assuming that you have already registered this vehicle as an aircraft, you can then take off and fly directly to your destination up to 200 miles per hour and 13,000 feet. Now, back on land, you can transform your flying car back to driving mode. The wings stow safely and are protected, and you can continue onward to your final destination. Now, there have been many attempts to flog the concept of a flying car, of course, but this one does seem to have taken to the air. You can actually see it in the video I've just linked. It's got a cruise speed in the air of 160 miles per hour. It's got a maximum driving speed on the ground of 125 mile per hour plus, and the maximum range is said to be 450 miles, although I think that's on the ground and not in the air. Now, it is actually classified as an experimental category aircraft in the US. So what that means is owners can buy one as a kit, but they are then required to build 51% of the vehicle themselves. Although it doesn't seem that the finished item is yet available. The company says they've taken thousands of reservations. We've heard that before. And they say that the build will be helped by Samsung's trained staff will be on hand to give you guidance. But you will need to front up at least $170,000 to get one of these on the road or in the air, and that is the from price, so expect add-on bits to put the price up even higher. Now, as you might expect, you will need a private pilot's license to get the thing into the air, and on the road you will need an automobile license. But here's the slight surprise: it seems that in some states at least, all you will need to ride or drive or whatever you do with this thing is to hold a motorcycle license. Although, frankly, I'm not sure I'd want to drive it at 125 miles an hour on three wheels. So, right, if the flying bike, plane, car isn't to your liking, what else have we got to talk about in the news? Well, redefining the term bonkers, at least in my book, are a pair of new bikes from BMW and Bimota. Now let's show you the first one. It is the BMW, and it is the M1000XR. Now, this was announced just before the Milan show, and if the 160 horsepower S1000XR isn't powerful enough for you, then this particular model, the M version, takes the 201 horsepower motor from the latest S1000RR. That's the road legal, it's a super bike, basically, and sticks it into the off-road adventure style bike. I wouldn't say it's off-road, is it? If you don't want to take off like the Switchblade, you'll probably need the aero wings that are said to keep the nose down under acceleration, and you'll need the more powerful M brakes to pull up too. That's assuming, of course, you keep the license long enough. Prices start at just £22,580. Now, if you want to push the boat out even more, of course, there are other options. No, that's the wrong picture. Where's the bimotor gone? There it is. I knew it was there somewhere. This is the Bimotor Terra. Now, if the BMW wasn't bonkers enough, this is the Bimotor's new performance crossover machine, and it gets Kawasaki's latest 200 horsepower 999 four-cylinder and an updated version of the Tacey hub center steering. Now, I'm sure that'll work well on dirt. It needs plenty of movement, I would thought. Now, likely price is the wrong side of £30,000. And look at that exhaust can. I mean, oh dearie me. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Now, meanwhile, head to KTM, and it seems like the manufacturer has pretty much squeezed a bike out for every license and every wallet. And I was wondering how on earth they might be able to fit another model in, but they seem to have done it. This is the Duke 990. Now, yes, there has been a 990 before, but this is a brand new one. It takes the engine from the 890 powered Duke and stretches the capacity to 947, so it's not quite the full sort of 990 or 1000cc, and it makes 123 horsepower anyway. But in case you think it is just a tired reboot of an existing franchise, plenty of films that use that technique. We're told that there's an all-new frame and of course revised styling. Now, go and have a look at the photos of this. To me, it looks like it's been styled with a 1980s bread knife. Maybe angles are back in bike styling in Austria at least. Now, hopefully next machine is that one. Yes, it is. Good. Now, you may recall that Moto Guzzi last year revealed this brand new Transverse V motor with the weird looking sideways exiting exhaust pipes, and this is because they have managed to twist the barrels through 90 degrees. Now, that was installed in the V100 Mandello Sports Tourer, and the uprated motor produces 120 horsepower. The fairing was also fitted with semi-active aero panels, you may recall. Well, now the engine has been put into a new machine. This is the Stelvio. Their name for an adventure bike has been reactivated. It gets taller suspension, it gets wire wheels, it gets a larger diameter front wheel. The single-sided swinging arm still carries the shaft drive to the rear wheel. It gets a bigger tank, and it gets an adjustable screen which whizzes up and down thanks to electricity. I think it looks purposeful enough, doesn't it? But I can't ever quite draw my eyes away from those exhaust pipes. They just look a bit weird coming out the bottom of the engine like that, rather than forwards and then wrapping around under the cylinder. And I can't help also but think that if you're going to put this into a very heavy bike with some adventure pretensions, that they're going to be even more vulnerable to a minor topple. So my first question with this is, where are the engine bars that are factory fitted? No sign of those anywhere. Now, another bike that I can't quite get my head around the steering, the styling, I can't quite make up my mind about this, is the XSR 900 fitted with the body kit that makes it look very, very loosely like a 1980s GP machine. Now, obviously it's missing the sort of Gaspers logos from those days, but the colour scheme is unmistakably a throwback to the Marlboro Yamaha era. Now, from some angles, the bike looks great, although I'd say it looks less like a GP bike and more like a four-stroke racer for obvious reasons. From others, it looks pretty much what it is really, a standard model with a weirdly designed body kit that could have been sourced from eBay. There's that horrible little slot in the front fairing that has the headlight tucked inside it. If you go back to Thursday last week and look at my Science of Being Seen item, you'll see that I encountered a motorcycle with a fairing very much like this. And almost completely missed it because the headlight as a day riding light was completely useless. The seat hump, when you look at it side on, really does look too short, and truth be told, the add-on bottom half of the fairing, it just doesn't line up properly. It sort of it doesn't match the bottom of the top half fairing, and when you do put it on, what it sort of kind of draws the eye straight to is the missing exhaust chambers, the expansion chambers that would have been up the side of the original GP bikes, and what it draws your eye to is the big can under the belly of the bike. Now apparently you can get the obligatory Akrapovic add-on, which partly replaces the silencer can under the belly of the bike and runs up the side. I've never seen the point of adding extra weight, frankly, to replace these silencers, but hey ho, that's what you can do. And the final turn off for me, it's not the tail tidy. I don't particularly like those, but hey, you've got to have a number plate and a rear light somewhere. It's those very nasty bar end mirrors. I really don't like those. So yeah, tell me what you think. Do you like those? Do you think they're hideous? Let me know what you consider makes for a good motorcycle. Right, now, okay, on to the final in-depth item. And this is all about the definition of a vehicle and how this applies to e-bikes and e-step scooters. Now, I've mentioned rather frequently there is something of a grey area when it comes to determining the crossover between an electric bicycle and a lightweight electric motorcycle, particularly since we kind of use the term e-bike rather too freely. Now, this all hinges around the death of a rider of a pedal-assisted cycle in Bruges in Belgium. The EU Court of Justice has made a ruling which will clear things up in Europe for sure, and probably will affect the way we see them over here. Now, what happened was the cyclist was hit by a motorist, and there were court proceedings concerning compensation, and a dispute arose over the legal classification of the electric bicycle and whether or not it should be regarded as a motor vehicle. Now, clarifying this legal classification was actually crucial to determine whether the victim's family was entitled to automatic compensation under a vulnerable road user clause in Belgian law, or whether the fact that the bike had electric assistance rendered it a motor vehicle. The Belgian court pointed out that the EU directive on civil liability does not indicate whether a vehicle must be propelled exclusively by mechanical power. So the Belgian court referred the interpretation to the EU Court of Justice, who duly decided to clarify matters. And what they did was they redefined the term vehicle to apply to, quote, any motor vehicle propelled exclusively by mechanical power. So that could be internal combustion engine, it could be electricity, but it implies that there is an external source of power other than the human riding it. Now, with that clear-cut definition available, they further ruled that pedal-assisted cycles are not propelled exclusively by mechanical power. They are thus bicycles, and therefore they are not covered by the obligation to be insured in the same way as motor vehicles. And so the bicycle involved in the collision, it was a pedal-assisted an electric bike with well, I should say it was a pedal-powered bike with electric assistance. That meant the family was entitled to compensation. Now, I suspect that the UK will probably at some point adopt the same definition, because it basically means market harmonisation between the UK and EU. It means it's easier to export and import across the border, and that should end lingering doubts in some people's minds about the legality of fully powered bicycles, which do have pedals but also have a throttle on them, and so that they can be used without any pedalling, pedal assistance, they can be fully powered. They will be vehicles, and as such they'll be classed as powered two-wheelers and subject to the same registration, license, insurance, road tax and age requirements as any other motorcycle. But the catch-22, of course, is that it's currently impossible to use these bikes legally. Now, as I said in an earlier show a couple of weeks ago, the Motorcycle Industry Association, the MCIA, clearly see an opportunity for their members by creating a new vehicle classification for these bikes, and that's what they've been prodding the government to do, which is why I suspect there was some hope that there would be some talk in the King's speech about bringing in new rules. And honestly, it would be a good thing to get this into law without any further delay, because it seems already that most of the electric bicycles I see in London are actually throttle controlled and thus technically motorcycles. Some don't even bother with the pretense of pedals, frankly. And the same obviously applies to e-step scooters. Now, thanks to this definition, they are undoubtedly vehicles. And the government is therefore correct to classify them as motor vehicles, as they have done for some time, of course. And that means riders, these would also have to hold a licence, have insurance, be taxed, registered, etc., for use on public roads. Now, the problem is that neither the powered bicycles nor the powered e-scooters are type approved as vehicles. So there's no control over braking systems, over lights, over battery safety when recharging, or even over the general construction of these things. I've actually seen a couple of abandoned e-scooters that have actually snapped in two. And there's no control over top speed either. Now, seeing non-pedalling riders zipping down the bus lane faster than me when I'm driving at 20 miles per hour is fairly common now in London. And I also mentioned, I think it was this year, about this time of year, I was driving on dual carriageway in the dark. I was doing 35 miles per hour also in fairly heavy traffic, and I was actually passed by a Suron electric bike which was lane splitting and doing 40 plus miles per hour. No helmet, no number plate, no insurance, no license and no lights. So it's all very well having the rental schemes and trials for step scooters and pedal assisted bicycles, but there's clear evidence that ordinary individuals want to use both the assisted bikes but also fully powered cycles and the e-step scooters outside of the trial areas. So if people want to ride these things, to me, I would say, fine, get them legal. And the easiest way to do that would be to start by defining what is legal and then to get some type approval in place. And that will put a stop to the current free-for-all, because these bikes currently can be perfectly legally imported, they can be perfectly legally sold, and they can be perfectly legally sold for illegal use. If the bikes don't comply with the rules, then it will become illegal to sell them, and then trading standards can jump on the job. So whether or not the current government, of course, will show any inclination to fix the problem in their remaining year or so in power is another matter altogether. Anyway, so let me know what you think about that. That's the latest developments on law in the EU and how it might apply to the UK. Now, before I shut up shop for today, I just want to give a quick shout out to this week's supporters on Coffee. They are Living Martial Arts, Johan, Mad Cockney, Sandy, Howard, Nick and Anonymous. Thank you very much indeed to all of you for your continuing support. And don't forget, if you're not a supporter, pop over to my Coffee page, take a look, see what's available to you there. It's likely to be the biggest resource of better biking information for riders anywhere on the web. They're getting on for 1,000 articles over there now, which you can access for just £3 for a month's access. Everything over there from free articles to downloadable copies of some of my paperbacks as well in the shop. So drop me a coffee, get all that and get your name in lights here. And don't forget, there are regular subscriber specials too. Watch out for those, and of course there are going to be those Black Friday offers. So that is it for today. Thank you all very much indeed for looking in. Thank you for your comments that you've made during the show or to come. And if you are out there today, keep an eye on the spread of that rain across the country and stay shiny side up.